Hey, Coach Candace here, and I would like to take the time to discuss a topic today that I know I have faced in the past, and I have clients that are faced with it, and I know many people do have to work through this circumstance. And it's one where people may feel like they're on a roll and they're eating according to their goals, and then have like one of those rough days, and let's say they perhaps go off the deep end with the choices that they may make regarding nutrition or whether to exercise or not. And again, having known that I've been there myself, like when I was very first starting and trying to improve my nutrition, I would perhaps do well for about 3 or 4 days, have one of those rough days, and then completely just feel like I'm off the deep end there. And again, same for this challenge that a client and I were discussing yesterday is something that person is faced with as well. And I like to encourage folks to think that eating healthy, like before it becomes a habit, is almost like developing a certain set of skills and really being on track. Now, again, I wish I could come up with a different phrase of being on track, but we're going to go with it for right now for today's conversation. But let's say eating in alignment with your goals. That might be what on track means to you. But being on track is a skill, like especially in the early days before it becomes something that you just do. But we're talking about those times where maybe we're not eating in alignment with those goals. That let's say we're going to call that off track. At times when it's only it's often inevitable that you're going to go off track, like whether again you go on vacation and you choose to just enjoy whatever you would like, or again just one of those rough patches where you just feel like you're off track more than you're on track. So ultimately getting back on track is just as much a skill. But helping to prevent that in the future does require some reflection. And I often encourage folks, like the number one thing is to reflect on how it happened. Because it's hard to rectify in the future if you don't think about how it happened first. And many times it can often come down to a failure in one or at least more of the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps are planning, preparation, and prioritization. Usually somewhere along the lines, we've either just failed to plan or failed to prepare or failed to prioritize, or maybe we've done all of those. I know myself when it hasn't been the most ideal week for myself, and I think back like how could have what do I feel like led to that happening? Oftentimes it was like failing in preparation. Like I didn't have meals that were handy for when I got home after a long day, and I just ate the first thing that was available, and maybe that wasn't necessarily in alignment with my goals. So I'm just as susceptible to the same things as many other people are. So usually it's again looking back, like did you like not plan for the day and you kind of wung it just to see like how you think you'd be okay, but you weren't really sure? Maybe you didn't prepare and just have some better food choices available. Or maybe it's just errors in prioritization. Are you saying yes to too many things in your life, and maybe perhaps you should say no to some things to allow you to prioritize time for your health and whatnot? Or again, maybe it just hasn't become a priority yet in your life, and that takes time for people to develop that. But some other causes that might attribute to people perhaps falling off track and having a hard time getting back on track is that striving for perfection. I've been there where you're trying to strive for perfection, and ultimately it doesn't end up being conducive towards your goals in the long run. Like you do need room to enjoy things with family, or to have something in a spur of the moment. And that's why we make better decisions the vast majority of the time, so that we do have room to make those impromptu decisions. But many times people set themselves up so much for perfection and they fall short of that. They just give up completely. So I'd rather you focus more on consistency than perfection. And that was in a video I just recently did. Another reason that some people may struggle with, let's say, being on track but they fall off track, and to summarize, it might be over dramatizing. So And in this case, I said sometimes like what we think is like a bad day is not really as bad as we thought it was. And sometimes, especially like when I'm tracking and trying to be mindful of my intake, I'll actually track those things that I feel like aren't necessarily in alignment with what I want to eat for the day, or I'd actually track what I actually ate. And I actually come to find out that my bad day is not as bad as I thought it was. So sometimes seeing those objective numbers will help your irrational mind come to better sense with it. And lastly, environment. Like, is your environment helping you be set up for success? And again, perhaps maybe I've discussed it elsewhere. I do have a resource I could share with you, but like our red, yellow, or green light foods, like green is like the foods that you can comfortably have around and you can control yourself around. Yellow is those kind of things like, yeah, the vast majority of the time I can control myself, but sometimes I cannot. And red is one of those things that like when this is around, I can't stop thinking about it and I'm not going to be able to control myself. And in this circumstance, for this person, it may have been a red light food. And I've shared my story in the past where for me, like that was ice cream. Like at my household, like we would each have our own half gallon of the flavor that we liked. And there was no getting a bowl. You just used your own spoon and you ate out of it. So for myself, like I knew that was like a trigger for me. So like having a half gallon of ice cream was not something I had around. I saved that for a trip to the ice cream place. This way I know like, hey, I'm gonna have my portion, I'm gonna have enough to be happy and walk away. And it's not gonna always be there in the freezer calling my name and having me think about it. So if it's something that you repeatedly have a hard time managing portions of, then it's probably best that you don't have that in the house until at a later time when you've developed like better habits around that. So I want to say it's not like that for all things for me now, but also too, like when we talk about environment, sometimes it's having like a supportive person, and yes, that has its own challenges. Whereas perhaps somebody else in the household is not willing to adopt the same, like that does require also a different set of skills and being strong in what is important to you, and takes time and practice, and again, is not always easy, and I recognize that. So in closing, be gentle on yourself, and realize like, again, like when people dwell on track, off track, like again, it could also stem from this striving for perfection. And I'm going to lovingly tell you, like, it will not go perfect. And when we make those mistakes or we kind of drift from like our goal, again, it's always a period of reflection. And we can also go back to, why does the goal matter to you, and what does all of this mean to you? But each time it's an opportunity, like, okay, like I fell off track, what can I learn from that? And hey, this is how I'm practicing getting back on track. So for example, I shared, for me personally, many times when I go on vacation, I'm going to have whatever I so feel like having, whether it necessarily supports my goals or not. If I'm going to be somewhere with unique foods, I'm going to try those. I'm not worried about the calorie count or the content of it. I'm there to just simply enjoy. And but again, coming back from vacation, like, hey, this is my opportunity to practice getting back on track when I know maybe I haven't been eating in that same alignment. So I know that was a lot and really like glossing over a lot. So by any means, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask. I hope you found that helpful. I hope that offers some reassurance for you that you can make the change, and to be patient with yourself when you do perhaps make a mistake or lose your way. But again, feel free to reach out if you need anything. Take care.